Hello everyone and welcome to my Wild Rift tier list for patch 6.1b. Apologies that this took a little bit longer than usual. I know a lot of you have been waiting for this tier list and waiting for this video to release. I've actually been really busy the last few days updating and adding new builds to so many champions on the website. So as always, if you want to check out the website, if you want to check out all the best builds for Wild Rift, link will be down in the description. But as I mentioned, I think there are a lot of changes coming into this patch with 6.1b. There were champion changes, there were item changes. There are also some new builds coming up as well. Champions like Mordekaiser being played in the jungle, Jarvan support, Nunu support, which I've also added to the tier list. So there's a lot to get through in this video with champion changes, where, you know, who's been moved up and down from S plus tier and S tier. There's a lot to go through. So let's start off in the Baron lane. Honestly, not too much has changed in the Baron lane. I think there are a few really good changes to the Baron lane, but honestly, I think some of the changes just wasn't enough in my opinion. I still think the three best champions right now in the S plus tier, Wukong I think is still very, very powerful. Every time that I see someone go up against a Wukong in the Baron lane, they really struggle. The champion works so well with Grasp, plus his first ability, his damage is insane, and also when he joins team fights as well is also very powerful. Gnar did receive a little bit of a nerf, the percentage damage on his second ability and also the attack speed from his passive. Overall, I still think the champion is very powerful and just has a lot of playmaking potential. That range versus melee matchup in the early game is still going to go in Gnar's favor, and also he's going to be very strong in team fights with his ultimate. Quick reminder as well before I carry on with this, if you are enjoying the content on this channel and if you do love Wild Rift content, then make sure you subscribe to the channel and also like the video. So for Rumble, I think is the best AP damage source champion in the Baron lane right now. There are a few other good ones as well, like Gwen, Ryze can still work well, Mordekaiser and Volibear, but I think, in my opinion, Rumble is just way above the rest right now. Damage is absolutely insane. Teamfight ultimate is crazy. The shielding needs to be nerfed on his second ability. Crazy amount of shielding that he gets like every 4 or 5 seconds, which is a very low cooldown. But yeah, in my opinion, overall, S plus tier champions, very powerful, all very strong and all work in pretty much every game as well. There's not really a lot of good counter matchups for any of these champions. S tier champions though are still champions that are still very powerful and can still be played. Of course, Ryze has moved down from S plus tier to S tier in the Baron lane. I did add him in during the middle of the patch, middle of last patch. You might have missed it on the website, but I did have him in S plus tier, but of course, with the nerf that's happened, he's lost quite a lot of damage, I think, in terms of the third ability and the first ability. You know, the AP ratio going down, the base damage going down. I still think Ryze has a great time in both the Baron lane and also the mid lane. Still scales incredibly well and still is a great champion, but just not that same S plus tier material that he was before the nerf. Nasus has also moved down to the S tier. I still think the champion is very powerful. Lucidity boots still work very well on him. Fleet footwork is still a great rune to run, and you have Sheen, which works very well with his first ability. He might not still have that same 1v1 potential in the early game that he did before, with his life still being nerfed, his damage on his Q being nerfed, and also some things like magic resist going down, base AD going down. His early game has become a little bit weaker, but Nasus still serves the same purpose, that if you stack your first ability, if you get a few items, you can just run towards someone with your ultimate. Your first ability will have like a 1-second cooldown, and you just keep bonking over and over again. Keep rocking that Sheen passive. Lucidity boots is going to help with that as well. And yeah, overall, he doesn't have any mana problems anymore because of Lucidity boots, and that's why, in my opinion, he still stays in the S tier. Again, not as powerful after the nerf, but still very powerful. If I look over to my right hand side, you'll probably notice that I'm just looking at stuff and making sure that I do not miss anything. Jax got buffed as well. It was kind of like a quality of life change more than a buff, to be fair. You can now jump towards. The first ability now has more leap speed, and then the third ability can now stop on-hit effects like Fiora, for example. Jax was very strong in the previous patch and is still very powerful this patch. I don't think nothing has really changed with Jax in general. Shen, I think Shen's buff is actually very good. I think Shen always struggled with wave clear, especially early on. I think there was so many other bruisers that can just walk up, use their abilities, and just wave clear early on. And also Shen never really had any benefit from split pushing either, because he took so long to push these waves. But I think with the, you know, first ability with the wave clear going up on the with the minions, he can now actually pressure in a side lane and still join team fights with an ultimate. I think Shen is still a pretty underrated champion, still very, very powerful. Of course, he builds as a tank, but you can also build in Bruiser as well. You can go for items like Divine Sundra, which allows him to have great trading potential, and the champion is still very, very powerful. But the buff just makes him even better, in my opinion. He was A tier before, because like I said, his pushing wasn't very strong, and he didn't really win most side lane matchups, to be fair, as well, which, to be fair, he still doesn't. But at least his pushing is a lot better now, so he can actually try and push towards towers. Olaf also moved up to the S tier. I believe he was A tier before. Olaf moved up to the S tier as well. The buff that actually came in for Olaf doesn't help him in the Baron lane too much, because most of the time you actually max your third ability and you actually wait for your first ability last. But you do have that flexibility now that you can max your first ability maybe first in the lane, or you can go for your third ability still. I think that flexibility there is quite nice. Especially if you're against champions that you can run down, you can definitely go for your first ability and just keep spamming it over and over again. But overall, Olaf has been pretty strong in the top lane for quite some time. His trading power is very good. His ultimate works very well if you get locked down by anyone in the Baron lane. Early game, pretty good as well. He still has good trading potential. I think the champion is just very good in the Baron lane. That's why I've moved him up into the S tier. Same with the other champions as well. I mean, nothing else has really changed in the S tier. There are still really strong champions up there. Volibear was very tempted to move up to S+ tier. I think this champion is really, really underused right now and is very, very strong. Very tempted to move Volibear up. But yeah, Camille, Gwen, Singe still very good. Warwick still very good as well. Aatrox, Poppy. Of course, Poppy buffs with more to the jungle, which I'll talk about later. And then if you want tanks, you can go for something like Ornn as well. So I think every champion in the S tier can work for sure and can be very, very powerful. A tier as well. I think these champions can also work in the right scenario. I still think these champions can be, you know, very, very strong. Set did receive a bit of a buff. I don't think the buff is enough. I know he has a crazy high play rate for some reason over in China. I guess they just love playing Set, but I just don't think the champion is still nowhere near, in my opinion, as strong as these other bruisers in the S tier. The buffs were nice. I think they're definitely going to help him, but I still don't think he was, I still don't think he's that strong. Malphite, I've actually moved down into the A tier, and the reason why we're seeing a lot more AP champions being played in the top lane right now, like Rumble, Gwen, Jax, you know, Warwick as well. There are a lot more AP champions being played in the top lane right now, and that just means in general Malphite's going to be weaker and weaker. Malphite has always been a champion that if you're against a lot of AD champions, you're going to pick, but if you don't have a lot of AD if you're not against a lot of AD champions, sorry, then he's not going to be a very useful pick. That's why I've put in the A tier from S tier, because S tier champions are kind of like you can pick them pretty much anytime you want to. Malphite, you can't really. So that's why I moved him down to A tier, because he's only good into certain matchups. But the champion still works very well, and I still think that he has a lot of tankiness and a lot of crowd control to offer. Garen rework hasn't come out. Garen rework is actually coming out tomorrow when this video releases, so I will update the build and the tier list for Garen when he does when the rework does release, after I play him a little bit. Quick reminder, I will be streaming tomorrow as well. I know I haven't been streaming for the last few days because I've been updating the website, but I will be streaming tomorrow and testing out the Garen rework to see what it's like. So that's definitely going to be happening tomorrow, which is going to be pretty fun. But yeah, Garen for now just stays in A tier, nothing really changing there. And then I've added Nautilus Baron lane. There's this one guy, I cannot remember his name, but he has told me to add a Nautilus Baron lane build, honestly, for like the past year. I don't know who it is. I don't know if he's still around or not. If he is, then please comment down below and let me know. But yeah, Nautilus Baron lane, I finally added a new build for him. I don't think he's actually that good in the Baron lane. I think that's why I put him in B tier. I think as a tank he's not very powerful, but as you can see, solo lane, I did a build for him, build and runes and everything as well, so you can give it a try if you want to in the Baron lane. Again, I don't think it's very good, but you know, B tier I think is where it perfectly sits. We're still waiting for the Ambessa rework. I'm not too sure when that's going to come out, but it's going to mean that Ambessa is going to be much stronger in the Baron lane. And yeah, everything else is pretty much the same. A tier champions are pretty much the same. Yone and Yasuo changes are quite interesting. I honestly don't think actually any of their builds changed at all. They both work so much better with Grasp, with trading potential in the Baron lane. I think the Yone is actually probably strongest in either mid lane or jungle right now. Yasuo, again, probably strongest in mid lane. The crit damage did help a little bit with these two champions, but like I said, I don't think their builds really changed at all. It's not that big of a change to be like, oh, you have to build this champion crit now. I still think that they struggle a lot in the laning phase if they do just build full burst crit. Other than that, no other changes in the Baron lane. Most of the other Baron lane champions are pretty decent. Yeah, everything's all good there. Jungle, Nocturne. Holy moly, Nocturne. I ban this champion every single game. I'll be totally honest with you. Every single game, if my team does not ban Nocturne, I ban every single game. This champion is the biggest Wild Rift stomper I've seen for a very, very long time. No one knows how to play against Nocturne, and the problem with Wild Rift is that people do not group that often. The biggest counter to Nocturne is if you just cuddle each other and you group as 5 people, and then Nocturne doesn't have anyone to ulti on. But that never happens in Wild Rift. Someone's pushing in the side lane, someone's getting caught in the river, and Nocturne just darkness and then just one-shots them as well. Nocturne does crazy amount of damage. His jungle clear speed is also very, very strong. Probably one of the fastest in the game right now with Amumu and also Morgana. But yeah, Nocturne, very, very powerful. Really, really good carry to play. Like I said, in my opinion, the best AD jungler to play out there right now, and I ban it every single game as well. Amumu nerfs didn't do anything at all. I still think the champion is very, very powerful. I think it's a lot better in low elo than he is in like high elos. I've been playing a bunch of legendary queue, and not really a lot of people play in legendary queue because there are a couple of bruisers that can maybe outplay and, you know, run over the Amumu. But I think the champion is still warrant to be in S+ tier because how fast his jungle clear speed is, how tanky he is, how much damage he does, and how much impact he can make in team fights as well. So Amumu, in my opinion, stays in S+ tier even after the nerfs. Poppy Jungle. Poppy Jungle's back. I did delete the build a few patches ago because Poppy Jungle was kind of weak. But now Poppy Jungle's back, and I think she's actually very strong now. The buff that they did to her first ability with her jungle clear speed is going to be... has done wonders for her. She has so much better jungle clear speed now. You can also run fleet footwork, which, as you can tell, there are quite a lot of junglers that run fleet footwork this patch because of just how strong the rune is and how much it enables junglers to help with clear speed. But in general, Poppy, very, very powerful. Clear speed gone up by a lot. Ganking potential still very strong. Also builds like a tank as well. So you go like Trinity Force into full tank. Yeah, very strong jungler to play right now. In terms of the other champions in the S tier, Xin Zhao buff as well. There are a lot of buffs that have happened that have moved champions to S tier. Xin Zhao buff to his third ability. You actually still start the second ability in the jungle at the moment, which I've changed on the website, and I've changed his jungle pathing ever so slightly. But Xin Zhao still starts the second ability, but third ability buff is really, really nice. Don't know why they buffed Xin Zhao because I thought the champion's very strong. And also I changed it to Phase Rush as well because Phase Rush is a lot better for Xin Zhao. I've been playing Xin Zhao a lot in the jungle, and I think he is very, very strong right now. Olaf buff, as I mentioned, doesn't really affect him too much in the Baron lane, but my god does it affect him a lot in the jungle. Again, his jungle clear speed now is much better than before because in the jungle you max your first ability, you start blue buff, and you just keep spamming your first ability over and over again, and this just helps his jungle clear speed a lot. Of course, Olaf is only really very good against a lot of crowd control because of his ultimate. If the enemy doesn't have a lot of crowd control, and if they have a lot of burst damage, like Veigar, for example, then you are going to be very squishy when you use your ultimate. But in general, the champion, I think, is very, very powerful right now. And if you pair him with like a Lulu or Yumi, pretty much unkillable. Vi also received a nice buff, passive buff, I believe it was, to the clear speed with the % max health buff, and also the buff to the first ability damage. Again, buffing the clear speed. Most of the junglers got buffed in terms of clear speed, which is very, very helpful for them. But Vi was decent already. Vi was in A tier before. I think she was a decent jungler. She has great lockdown with her ultimate, but now they just buffed her even more. She definitely moves up to the S tier. Very, very powerful. Again, kind of like Xin Zhao, Olaf, the clear speeds going up is very, very nice. And also Jarvan moved up to the S tier. Again, another champion that got a buff, third ability damage, and also third ability attack speed. So again, buffing his jungle clear speed, buffing his overall damage, which they've done to every single one of these bruisers that I've just spoken about. And they were on the brink of S tier before. So these buffs just basically nudged them up to the S tier, in my opinion. Great champions to play, great carry champions as well. Bruisers in general just work very, very well in jungle at the moment. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it in the S tier. There's still some AP champions to play. Oh yeah, Lilia, I moved down from the S+ tier to the S tier. I just think that Nocturne and Amumu are just a step above Lilia right now. The problem with Lilia is that she's not very good in terms of ganking. With Lilia, you just AFK farm, wait until you get 2 or 3 items, and then you become useful in fights. You just keep farming over and over again. But sometimes that's not really the best playstyle to play. Whereas champions like Amumu, Nocturne, as soon as you reach level 5, you can make an instant impact onto the map, and you can make a real big difference. You know, even other champions in the S tier as well. Vi with her ultimate at level 5, Jarvan ultimate level 5, Wukong, Riven. There are so many champions here that, you know, make a huge impact at level 5. Lilia doesn't really do it too much because her ganking's not really too great, but once you power farm, once you get a few items, then she becomes very, very powerful in late game. Ram is still very good, more of like a counter pick, but still very good jungler to play. And Best is still very powerful. Warwick, Echo, Morgana, still very good AP junglers to play. Morgana is definitely more of a supportive jungler. I'd be a little bit careful when you're playing Morgana because you can't really make too many plays and you're more supportive, where you're sitting back using your second ability as pulls. You're using your third ability to try and stop any crowd control from coming to your teammates' way. Bit of a scary pick to go, but I still think it's S tier because of how fast jungle clear speed is. Echo's still a great carry as well. And yeah, rest of S tier pretty much stays the same. Viego, I think I had an A tier before, but I moved up to S tier. Again, Viego pretty strong right now because of just how much burst damage you can deal. And also just the carry potential Viego is definitely up there. You'll see a lot of new junglers in here. One is Mordekaiser. Honestly, there is a video that I'm releasing. I'll try and release it tomorrow, but I'm not too sure because I'm busy later on this evening. But Mordekaiser jungle is actually really, really strong. I honestly think this might be one of the most underrated junglers to play. I think the champion has great ganking potential with his ultimate. He can just cancel out anyone in a team fight. And the cool thing about Mordekaiser jungle as well is you just go full burst damage. Like, look at this. Infinity Orb, Awakened Soul Stealer, Death Cap, Rift Maker, and then you got a defensive item as your last item. You go Phase Rush as well because you don't need Conqueror for the trading. You just go Phase Rush, you get a crazy ton of movement speed, a bunch of ability haste, you ultimate someone, and you can honestly one-shot them. Like I said, I've got a video coming out soon where I played Mordekaiser jungle, gave it a try. I was like, I need to add this build in jungle because it's very, very strong. I put in A tier for now because I'm a little bit hesitant. You know, maybe it was just like a one-game wonder, but I do think he is, you know, strong enough to put in the A tier right now. Just making sure I haven't missed anything. Evelyn got a nice buff. I still don't think the buff is enough to put her in like S tier, for example. I definitely think she's better than B tier champions now. Buff was quite nice. Her ultimate cooldown, her first ability especially, the damage going up is very, very nice. Bit of a low elo stomper. Again, high elo is a little bit difficult because the problem with champions like Evelyn is you're just going to get invaded in high elos. You know, same with champions like Fiddlesticks, which I'll talk about in a second. But yeah, Evelyn is kind of, you know, kind of hit or miss in the jungle, but can definitely carry games. Yone, as I mentioned, is, in my opinion, probably one of the best roles right now is in jungle and also mid lane. But Yone jungle, the problem with Yone jungle is that his early jungle clear speed is very, very slow. You've finished clearing jungle after like 2 minutes, which is very slow compared to other junglers. But once you get 2 or 3 items, the jungle clear speed becomes much better, and also his carry potential is unlike probably any other jungler because of just the outplay potential. The third ability just allowing you to jump back to safety whenever you want to. His burst damage, the crit damage going up as well is very, very nice. So in general, I still think Yone jungle can still work and it can still be very, very powerful. Nautilus jungle, of course, when you're playing AP, I moved him up from B tier to A tier. The burst damage for Nautilus, and just Nautilus in general right now, is a very strong champion. There are some supports right now, which I'll talk about in the support section, but there are some supports which basically just walk in the enemy jungle. You start your second ability on Nautilus, and you can just clear through like Raptors, for example, which is a crazy strategy that I'll maybe talk about in another video. But yeah, very, very powerful strategy to go. Spoke about Mordekaiser. Trendemir goes down to B tier. I just don't think the champion is very good at all. I think there are just so many other champions that are better than Trendemir. I had him in A tier before because he has decent carry potential, but I just don't think, I think the champion just takes way too long to come online. And again, you're just going to get invaded. You're going to be full behind, and you're just not very useful at the moment in the current meta. We have a few other champions as well that I've added back and also added. You can see a lot of fleet footworks here. Irelia, Fiora, and Camille. I've added them back into the jungle. I do think they're all B tier. There is some potential that these champions can go into A tier, especially champions like Irelia and Fiora. If you master them very well, I think they could definitely go into A tier. But what Fleet Footwork has done is made so many barrel laners actually play in the jungle now, because you have Fleet Footwork, and Fleet Footwork with that double auto attack just helps your jungle clear speed so much more. You see sometimes in China that Yone goes Fleet Footwork. You even see sometimes like Viego Fleet Footwork. Obviously, Aatrox Fleet Footwork makes him very, very powerful. In general, Fleet Footwork has just made it so these junglers are more viable. Again, these are viable champions. They can work, but they're just not as strong as like A-tier champions. Fiddlesticks, even though Malignus did get buffed, and this did help him quite a bit. Problem is, again, Fiddlesticks just gets invaded. There is nothing you can do if an Aatrox or a Lee Sin or a Jarvan or anyone invades your jungle. You cannot do anything as Fiddlesticks. You just have to walk away and just give up your jungle, which is why, in my opinion, Fiddle stays B tier. Same with KO as well. You just get invaded. And Maokai just, unfortunately, isn't a jungler in Wild Rift. I still put a build in here because it's kind of meh, but yeah, doesn't really work. Mid lane. I don't think there are any S+ tier champions in the mid lane right now. I think that every single champion in the S tier has crazy potential to carry games. I've moved a few champions up. I've moved a few champions down. Ryze, of course, received a nerf that I talked about already in the Baron lane, but I still think the champion still works great. That's why he still stays S tier with the other champions. Syndra as well, of course, has moved down from S+ tier to S tier. I was thinking to myself, I was like, if I'm moving Ryze down because he got nerfed, do I really think that Syndra is like S+ tier, like the best mid laner? And then I was thinking, like, I don't think there are any S+ tier mid laners. I cannot think of a single mid laner here right now that is performing above the rest. I think all these champions are very strong in the right scenarios, but I don't think any of them are like crazy OP right now. I think just mages in general crazy OP, but that's why pretty much all the mages are in S tier. So he's very strong with the pick potential. Ari, of course, with a nice buff to Malignance, means that she stays in S tier. Ryze, as I mentioned, moves down a little bit. Orianna still very, very strong and very powerful if you just spam your abilities. Heimerdinger with this full burst build. Some people build in Malignance on Heimerdinger, but I don't agree with it because you're basically stuck with using your third ability every time with your ultimate, which is not always the best case scenario. Swain is probably one of the most underrated mid laners right now. I think I have like a crazy 5 or 6 win streak right now with Swain in mid lane. Very, very powerful. Malignance buff also helped him as well. I think he's one of the most underrated and one of the best mid laners to play right now, just because of his tankiness and his frontline potential on top of his damage as well. Aurelion Sol, great mid laner to play, one of the best late game scaling champions in the game. If you can farm up, if you can get to the late game, then great. Problem is this early game is a little bit weak. You can try and clear through minion waves, but it can be a little bit difficult, and sometimes he can get like outroamed by other champions and out traded in the early game. But again, if you just play passive and you just farm the whole game, your third ability becomes so huge it covers the entire lane, and then you can do a crazy amount of burst damage with your empowered ultimate. Annie, again, Malignus buff, still very strong mid laner to play, great pick potential. Victor's still very strong as well, again, with the scaling in mid lane. Corki, I moved up to S tier. I think this champion is just way too overpowered right now and way too overtuned. That's why I put him in the mid lane. Maybe doesn't work as well as, you know, in the AD carry role. You'll see that Corki is S+ tier in AD carry, but still works great in mid lane if you're auto-filled mid lane, for example, and if you want to play an AD carry, then Corki's the best one to play. And Castin, again, Malignance buff. Before, you actually didn't build Malignance because it was very difficult to delay death cap, but now you can actually go for Rod of Ages, Archangel, Malignance. The AP buff is really nice. The gold reduction is also very nice as well, and I definitely put Castin in the S+ in the S tier, sorry, not S+ tier. You can maybe warrant that I can move like all these champions up, like, and actually no. I was thinking like I move all this up to S+ tier and I move all this to S tier, but I was like, no, these champions are not S tier. They're just no champions at S+ tier right now. A tier, I don't think too much has changed in A tier. I moved Morgana down to A tier. Now, even though Morgana has a crazy high win rate, kind of what I mentioned in the jungle is that when you're playing Morgana mid, you're playing a much more supportive playstyle. You are not playing a carry when you're playing Morgana mid, and that's why I put her in A tier, because she's not a carry compared to these other S tier champions. She's more supportive, she's more backline. You sit in the backline, you use your pull. If you hit a dart binding, great, happy days. If you don't, then you're pretty much a sitting duck. You just spell shield someone and you just use your ultimate defensively. You never really use your ultimate, or you never really flash in and use your ultimate aggressively, because there are so many dashes. People have stasis and flash up every so often, so many dashes that it's very difficult to play a more aggressive style with Morgana. So that's why I moved her again. The thing is like, I cannot put Morgana in the same tier as all these other champions. I cannot. Like, all these other champions have so much better carry potential and so much better, you know, 1v9 potential, whereas Morgana doesn't. So it's very hard for me to put her in the same tier as the rest of these. Vex's buff was actually very nice. I was very tempted to move her up into the S tier, but I think she's more of a counter pick than anything else. If you're against these mages in the mid lane, then Vex can still struggle a little bit because she doesn't have the same range. She doesn't have the same wave clear as other mages. However, if you are against a melee champion in the mid lane that wants to jump on top of you, I don't know, say for example, you're against like an Akali mid or a Zed mid lane, Yasuo, Yone, any of these champions that want to dive in onto melee range, Vex is the best champion to play. I think she moves up to S+ tier if you're against a melee champion mid lane. But against ranged champions, she has a bit more of a difficult time. But her buff was definitely very nice, and she definitely got a lot stronger this patch. Yasuo with the changes, again, as I mentioned, I still think Yasuo builds more tankiness in the mid lane. There is an opportunity now that you can go for like Mortal Reminder and Infinity Edge. You can benefit from the buff from Infinity Edge, but I wouldn't really build it until the last item. Mortal Reminder is obviously a situational item, but again, you still have the 2 crit items here. But items like Wit's End and Divine Thunder just work so well for Yasuo. The changes mean that crit works better, but I still don't think that's the way to play Yasuo right now, in my opinion. Irelia and Vladimir are moved up to A tier. Vladimir, I think I'm kind of sold a little bit. I watched a little bit of China. I watched a little bit of pro play with Vladimir, and I'm pretty much sold him. Of course, these players are a lot better than, you know, the general Wild Rift audience, but I think Vladimir, once you get a few items and once you get to late game, again, kind of the same as like someone like, I don't know, like Aurelion Sol or Kassadin, your early game is pretty weak, but once you scale and get 2 or 3 items, the late game carry potential of Vladimir is very, very strong. I still think Kassadin or Aurelion Sol are better late game scaling champions, but Vladimir definitely doesn't deserve to be in B tier. And Irelia, I think if you have just a little bit of a brain with Irelia, and if you're playing against these mages, you can punish very, very hard in the early game. You just need a little bit of a brain and maybe just a few games to practice her. She is a very difficult champion to play, but I think there are chances that you can just 1v9 games and just carry mid lane just from this champion basically alone. And Akshan, I've moved down into B tier. I just think this champion's completely useless at the moment, and no one ever plays him, and he just doesn't do any damage, and yeah, just not very useful. In terms of other champions, again, not really any other champions has really moved around. You know, you still got the likes of like Veigar and Ziggs mid lane that you can still play, Zyra as well, but I just don't think these mages are near enough as strong as like the S tier champions. And then B tier, you just got mediocre champions that are just kind of like, you know, better playing as support, like, you know, Karma and Seraphine, or better in the jungle like Talon. You know, even Jace is probably better in jungle right now, or even better top lane. Again, Gragas better in jungle. So it's just mid lane champions that you can play mid if you want to, but you're just not going to have as much of an easy time. One change with the AD carry. I'm honestly so surprised that nothing got changed in AD carry. Nothing at all. We are not buffing champions like, I mean, Kallista's got a rework coming soon, but we're not buffing champions like Twitch, Tristana, Samira. We're not nerfing Corki. Like, no AD carry changes, no item changes to AD carries as well. So yeah, nothing really changed. Only one change. I think Corki is a lot better than Varus, and I think Corki is probably the most broken champion in the game right now. Maybe that's a little bit of a stretch. Maybe not the most broken champion in the game, but definitely one of the strongest champions in the game. I would say he's like top 3 right now in terms of most broken champions in the game. I've been playing a lot of Corki recently, Legendary Q, and I have a crazy win rate right now on him. I think I have like a 60-70% win rate on Corki this season. Champion is just unkillable, safe to play, crazy amount of burst damage, and it's just very, very strong. Varus, as I mentioned, moved down to S tier. I still think the champion is very, very strong, but I think the problem with Varus, and this has always been the thing with Varus, is that he does a lot of burst damage, but you just don't feel like he's a great carry. Like, you just don't feel like you're carrying games or you're doing enough damage in team fights, where there are champions that just auto attack a lot more and just do a lot more damage with their auto attacks and with their abilities, like Ezreal, that can just, you know, be much, much stronger. But yeah, S tier hasn't changed. A tier hasn't changed. Nothing's changed with A tier. The champions, you know, are still in A tier. I moved Samira up from C tier to B tier. I think there are some scenarios where you're playing like tank supports with a lot of crowd control that Samira can work and you're not against a lot of crowd control, kind of like Katarina, but I don't think she deserves to be in C tier right now. I still think there are some games which she's viable, so that's why I moved her up. And yeah, Kalista Neela in C tier. Yeah, unfortunately nothing changed in AD carries. So if you skipped this part of the video and you're expecting like a few changes of AD carries and like some crazy breakdown, yeah, sorry, you came to the wrong place. No changes this patch. Support. Big change with support is redemption. No enchanter support should build redemption anymore. I'm going to click on pretty much every single enchanter support that I can see right now, and I'm going to quickly go through all of them. Seraphine, you go Harmonic now. This is basically the build that you go on every single support now. Harmonic, Ardent, Staff of Flame Water, Protector's Vow. There is zero flexibility with support role now because Ardent Sensor, the healing shielding percentage went down. Basically got removed, sorry, the healing shielding percentage. The base healing, sorry, on Redemption got nerfed, and they buffed the HP a little bit. You'll see every single support the same. Well, Ardent first because Lulu mainly gets played with enchanters. Harmonic, Ardent Sensor, Staff, Flame, Water, Protector's Vow. Same again, same again, same again. There's no flexibility right now on supports. Zero flexibility. If I'm missing an item that you think supports can still build, when enchanter supports can still build, then please feel free. It's completely different for like tank supports. There's so much flexibility with tank supports on what they can build. Anti-heal, anti-attack speed with Frozen Heart, anti-critical strike damage from Randuin's Omen, Kaenic Rukun, Zeke's Convergence, Yordle Trap. There's so much more flexibility with tank supports. Anyway, with that out of the window, Seraphine is still the best support in the game, I think, by far. Even though Redemption did get nerfed, Harmonic Echo is still very, very powerful. They did nerf all the healing and shielding percentages of all the support items, but honestly, that doesn't mean anything at all. It lost maybe 2 or 3% healing and shielding percentage once you add it all up correctly. But it's just not enough. I still think enchanter supports are very powerful. Like I said, in my opinion, Seraphine, very, very strong. Shielding is very powerful, has a lot of playmaker potential in team fights, has a lot of carry potential, and it's just very, very strong. Just below that, in terms of enchanters, Lulu can still work very well. The polymorph is still very powerful. The healing and shielding that you get, the ultimate is still very strong, very good. Milio with the extra auto attack range and the cleanse on the ultimate, again, very powerful tool. Soraka with the healing, and also Nami. Nami is probably the best laning phase enchanter right now in the entire game because her trading potential with her second ability and also her third ability, you actually play her a lot more aggressive now with going like Scorch, Empowered Attack, and Genius Hunter, and you just go full aggression with just trying to bully champions in the early game, especially some of these melee champions. But you do need to be a little bit careful when you walk up. In terms of tank supports, Blitzcrank have moved down from S+ tier to S tier, and the only reason why is that Blitzcrank is just still not that very good against tank supports. It's good against tank supports, but I think tank supports, are just becoming a lot more meta, and people are slowly moving away from enchanter supports, and that, in my opinion, just puts Blitzcrank a little bit lower. I think with some tank supports being very powerful, like Ornn, Nautilus being very strong right now, Maokai, Leona, these 4 supports right now, tank supports being very powerful. Blitzcrank can't really do anything against any of these supports. You hook a Maokai, he's just going to ulti and try and W away. You ulti a Nautilus, he's just going to ulti and use his second ability. Ornn as well can counter it with his hook with his second ability, and Leona is just super tanky. All these tanks are super tanky, and again, if you're not against Enchanter, then Blitzcrank definitely becomes much lower. I would say tank supports, he's A tier. Enchanter supports, he's S+ tier. So that's why he's A tier. He's in the middle right now. As I mentioned, the other tank supports are very powerful. Leona's buff definitely helped her out a few patches ago. Means she stays in S tier. Ornn is very underrated, and so is Maokai as well. So many people play these 2 champions in Baron lane, but honestly, they're probably better in support right now than Baron lane. The playmaking potential, the pick potential, and the actually crazy amount of damage that you do as well with these champions is out of this world. Nautilus, I need to do a video on, and I need to remember to do a video on this because honestly, you can play this champion as support right now. You can invade the enemy jungle and you can just steal his raptors. You can steal his jungle camps really, really easily. And I need to do a video to kind of show the strategy to not only educate, but also warn junglers at the same time because the strategy is very, very strong. And just in general, Nautilus is very powerful, super tanky, guaranteed engage with the ultimate, and just very, very powerful. I don't think I've done anything else. No. With that, some champions have moved down. Pike has moved down and Janna has moved down. I think Janna is one of the weaker of the enchanters right now just because she doesn't really do too much. She's great at peeling, but in terms of what she can offer to a team and the extra stats, I guess you can give to your team. That the difference is, right, if you think of like Lulu, you have movement speed buff, which yes, Janna does give as well, but you also have polymorph, which is very powerful when being engaged on. Ultimate gives you extra HP. Soraka just keeps healing over and over again, just like a heal bot. Milio gives you extra auto attack range, and Nami gives you the slow on the third ability. All Janna gives is extra AD, which yes can be nice, but her peeling is also okay as well with Tornado and her ultimate. But it's not as good as like a polymorph. You know, it's not as good as, you know, giving an AD carry extra auto attack range or giving AD carry slow on the auto attack. So that's why Janna moves down in my opinion. Pyke can still work, but I've also moved Pyke down. Again, I just think carry supports right now just are not that strong. Like Blitzcrank as well. I think Pyke and Blitzcrank kind of fit the same category with like this more carry support. Okay, I have no idea what that pop-up was. More idea with the carry support with like Blitzcrank and Pyke. But yeah, in general, these two, you know, Pyke can work, but he's just not as strong as the S tier. I think these supports are just way above the rest right now. Same with Seraphine. You can see a couple of new supports as well. Jarvan support, Nunu support. Nunu support is very, very popular in China. I never really see it being played in Europe. I've played it a few times. I definitely want to give it more of a try. Very good against tank supports and very good just against melees in general. Nunu, I think, is more of a counter pick more than anything else. If you're against enchanters, then Nunu becomes pretty useless because you can't get in range with your third ability, or you can't really make a real big difference. The great thing about Nunu is that his roaming potential is very good with the biggest snowball ever. He can roam to mid lane very easily. He can roam to other team fights. He can roam to Rift Herald. Very, very powerful in terms of roaming. And again, very good in laning phase if you're against a melee champion. If you're against a range champion, it can be a little bit difficult. But I think champion's really solid. I think he has great peeling. He has great, tankiness at the same time as well. And I think it's a decent support to play. Same with Jarvan as well. I think Jarvan is also a very, very strong support to play. Again, more against melee champions rather than range champions, which is why these sort of supports are coming up more often now. As I mentioned, with tank supports being played a lot more often because enchanters just keep getting nerfed over and over again, that more tank supports are being played. So now these kind of counter picks are coming on through, like Jarvan, like Nunu. Jarvan is just very, very strong. And I think the buff that happened to Jarvan with his third ability definitely helped him out with the attack speed it gives over to his AD carry. But he can engage, he can ultimate onto someone, he can lock them down. And yeah, Zeke's gets built every single time as well, because Zeke's is just the most OP item in the game right now. So yeah, and that also benefits these two champions in general. In terms of other A-tier champions, I do still think Yuumi is very good, but you need to play it in either duo queue or trio queue. If you play Yuumi in solo queue, you're just basically flipping a coin. If you have a teammate that's, viable and has a teammate that actually can carry and is good at the game, then Yuumi is great. If you have an entire team that is just completely running it down, then Yuumi is completely useless. So, like I said, Yuumi in solo queue, coin flip. If you're playing duo or trio queue, I would say she's probably S tier or maybe even S plus tier. Rakan's still a great engaged support as well. It just, in my opinion, there are better engaged supports right now, but Rakan is still very good. Karma is a bit interesting because in China, they play her more of a supportive role, and I do need to give this a bit more of a try, but Karma in general not being played as a carry, but more as an enchanter with... Harmonic Echo and Ardent Sensor and all these other items in the game. So I definitely need to give that a try. Alistar buff was quite nice, but I still don't think he deserves to be an S tier. I think there are much better tank supports right now, but I think Alistar was quite nice. And Amumu, I added a support role, but I don't think Amumu is that good. I think it's very niche and it can work in some scenarios, but in general, I don't think Amumu support is that good. Senna's still B tier. Poppy support still doesn't really work too well. Swain, even though he got buffed with Malignance again, doesn't really work too well. And that is it. That is the rundown for patch 6.1b. Hopefully enjoyed the rundown. Hopefully enjoyed the the tier list and everything as well. Again, if you have any other suggestions with the tier list, if you think a champion deserves to move up, a champion deserves to move down, if you check out the website and if you think the builds are maybe a little bit off or you have any feedback, of course, feedback is always welcome. I always listen to all your comments and I try and make the website the best it can be for all of you. So yeah, I appreciate you all tuning in. Until next time, stay safe, take care, and I'll see you all next one. Peace.